And that was one of the most terrifying campaigns I've ever been a part of. But August 8th, 2023 was one of the most exhilarating nights I have also ever been a part of. And I want to say that, a lot of credit for the success we had on August 8th, 2023 went to the Cuyahoga counties, the Franklin counties, the Hamilton counties of the state. But I was so proud of Portage County, who ran ahead of the overall margin of victory. No in August won 60-40. It carried over 70% of precincts in the county. And that's a testament to the work that was put in by the people in this room, as validators, as truth tellers, and ultimately as voting and democracy advocates. I continue to believe that Portage County leads the way in Ohio. It is the bellwether county in a state that I still believe can be a bellwether state for this nation. So do not lose that responsibility that we have in this room. Because as Portage County goes, so goes the state. And as the state goes, so goes the nation. So I just want to make sure, let's give it up. And so I hate to say it, but we're going to have to do it again. As soon as we got halfway through the last cycle of redistricting in the state of Ohio, when it was obvious that the reforms that were put in place in the previous decade that earned as close to unanimous support as you can get in today's political environment, that was not going to be adhered to and respected by the members of our General Assembly. It was evident that drastic steps needed to be taken. So, the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, Common Cause, a host of advocates and redistricting reformers got together in September of 2023 and started thinking through how in the world, if we are going to truly reform the way Ohio draws its legislative districts to create fair representation and fair maps, how are we going to do that when we have that undermined at every turn? And we did a lot of reflection. We did a lot of soul searching as to what worked and what didn't. And we came to a pretty simple conclusion. You can write all the best rules in the world you can. But if the people in charge of following the rules have no respect for them and have no interest in complying with them, then we need to change the ones who will in fact be following the rules. And that's exactly why we crafted the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment, with the biggest, most revolutionary change coming, that we would be removing wholesale those that have a direct conflict of interest, those whose personal benefit is directly related to the manipulation of our voting lines, and whose career prospects are only emboldened by no accountability at the ballot box. So, we've spent the last 7 months going around the state, collecting signatures, going to farmers markets, grocery stores, fairs, picnics, school events, convincing fellow Ohioans that it's time that we visit this question again. And we've been listening to what the people of Ohio have been saying, and they have said loud and clear, yes, we want to do this again. In Ohio, we need over 413,000 valid signatures to put an amendment on the ballot. and we need a specific number of signatures in half of Ohio's counties, 44. Without getting into specifics, I'm proud to say that we have met those benchmarks. And the volunteer signatures that we have been able to collect, 1 out of every 4 signatures that we will submit to the Secretary of State came from volunteers who took time out of their day, out of their weekend, to go pound the pavement and convince voters that this is what's right for Ohio. And that effort, it's hard to put a price tag on it, but that effort is what is going to give us momentum when we go into the persuasion phase of our campaign. Volunteer signature collectors have collected over 220,000 signatures by themselves. And that is an incredible feat. So, I want to give everybody who circulated a petition, who's attended a circulator training, who has done any sort of administering or organizing of our petitions into batch sheets, getting them turned in, making sure everybody has the right amount of supplies. This is truly a group effort, and this group should really pat themselves on the back, because Portage County was actually the 8th county that we cleared. You all were one of the first ones across the finish line, and once again proving that Portage County leads the way. Now, we know that this is not going to be an easy campaign. In fact, this is going to be the campaign of our lives. Our opponents' very livelihood, their source of power, comes from their ability to manipulate our voting districts. And power simply does not give itself up. One must retake it. And that is what the citizens of Ohio will do on November 5th. And it's going to be the people in this room again, leading that effort, discussing with your neighbors, family and friends, why redistricting reform is so important. Regardless of what your issue is, clean energy, gun safety, school funding, fracking, whatever your issue may be, it will never get anywhere unless the politicians in Columbus have a realignment to they listen to us, not their party bosses, not their party donors. And that is unfortunately what I have learned in my time in the State House and as a registered lobbyist in Columbus. Good ideas do not win in Columbus. Community support does not move the needle. What moves the needle can be discerned simply by looking at your quarterly campaign finance report. And that is not the way a healthy, functioning democracy operates. I was really, it hurt in 2021 and 2022 when the redistricting reform measures failed. I was talking with Jackie here before the program began. I was telling her I started interning down in Columbus in 2016. I interned with our good dear friend Catherine Tercer at Common Cause when I was still in graduate school. And in 2016, we were working on reforming the way we redistrict in the state. And when I moved to the state Senate, I worked for State Senator Vernon Sykes, an avid redistricting reform advocate. And we finally thought that we had made the breakthrough that was going to deliver the promise of a vibrant, responsive democracy. So when it became clear that that was not the case, that was a day that I will never forget. But it also gave me resilience. And I think it gave a lot of people in this room resilience as well. Because though it didn't work out the way we were told it would, the way we thought it would, and the way we knew it should, our resolve only became stronger. And that is why we have redoubled our efforts to finally, once and for all, remove politicians and lobbyists and those who would undermine citizen reforms from the process altogether. And I think we're going to win. I know we're going to win. The people of Ohio, through the work of the League of Women Voters, they know what redistricting is. They know what gerrymandering is. They know who's responsible for gerrymandered districts. And that would only have been possible because the people in this room made it possible. The people in this room are the ones who put redistricting as an issue in the public conversation. When I go out and I speak with other groups, I try to talk about redistricting, and I get about a quarter of the way through it and just eyes are glazed over. People are staring at the ceiling fan, and you can just tell some people don't quite get it. They think it's inside baseball. They think it's politics as usual. They think it doesn't really matter. And I am happy to say that the number of people that fall into that category are shrinking dramatically because they're reading the headlines on their local paper. They're reading letters to the editor of their neighbors, their pastor, their family, their friends, talking about the outcomes of gerrymandering and why that has led to what we've currently been dealing with. Distrust in public institutions, viewing those on the other side of the political aisle not as only a political opponent, but fundamentally as an enemy. A shift to the ideological extremes among our elected officials, the news media, and unfortunately that has filtered down to our community members as well. Citizens Not Politicians is about moving Ohioans back to a place where we can agree to disagree, where we can come together with consensus. We can see somebody else's perspective. And though we may not really agree on maybe how to get there, we agree on where we're trying to go. That is what is important about this amendment. And that is why I truly believe 2024, I hear this all the time, 2024, in my opinion, is the most important election in Ohio's history. The ramifications of what we can achieve in November will last our lifetimes and beyond. And so we cannot lose sight of that. We cannot lose sight of that when we just want to go to the 4th of July parade and we don't really want to hand out literature, it's hot, you're tired. You just want to kind of watch the parade, have some candy, see the fireworks. We cannot lose sight of that when we are having tough conversations with people we love and we're disagreeing on politics, business, the economy, what have you. We cannot lose sight of that we are on a righteous quest for common sense, for a return to camaraderie and a return to being focused on our collective future, not winning and losing, not playing zero-sum politics. Now, that does not only apply to the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment. The League of Women Voters has historically fulfilled one of the most sacred duties of our democracy, and that is of convener, facilitator, validator, and truth teller. There's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars spent in political advertising over the next 6 months. Unfortunately, many of it will not be true on both sides. Innuendo will be rampant. And it'll be up to trusted community groups like the League of Women Voters of Kent, like the League of Women Voters of Ohio, to play the critical role of cutting through the noise, bringing both sides to the table, and having an authentic, honest debate on the issues with integrity, so people can make informed votes, make informed choices. That, I think, is the true legacy of your organization. Being the ones who are willing to take up that mantle and take that responsibility on. The League of Women Voters of Ohio, I believe, is a product of the Enlightenment, where you talk about ideas in an honest way, in a good faith way. And at the end of the day, if the outcome isn't what you desire, well, at least you can hang your hat on the process. And in democracy, process is just as important as the outcome. And that is why I have been blessed in my personal and professional life to have such a strong working relationship with the dedicated servants of the League of Women Voters. I would encourage you, as we go through this campaign season, to remain vigilant, to maintain your conviction in your charge. There will be things said about the League of Women Voters. That is an unfortunate reality. They will not be said, obviously, with any truth behind them. They will be said by those who wish to discredit you, because they cannot discredit your message. That is a strategy as old as politics itself. If you can't attack the message, attack the messenger. And I just want everybody in this room to know that you will never be alone in this fight. The ACLU of Ohio, the League of Women Voters of Ohio, and countless others will be there, expressing the truth, providing a vision for the future, and again, reiterating the need for Ohioans to have an honest debate with integrity, regardless of where we end up at the end, because process matters. So, to close, once again, I just had to say thank you all so much for allowing me to join you today. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a long 6 months. It's going to be a fun 6 months. It's going to be a frustrating 6 months. The whole whirlwind of emotions that come with trying to achieve history Because that ultimately is what we will be doing between now and November, trying to achieve history and trying to reset Ohio on a course that will, again, reestablish Ohio as a national and world leader. I couldn't think of a better organization to take this challenge on with. An organization that, since its inception, has done nothing but further the franchise, fight for those who do not have a voice, and for those that would take for granted what we have. So, again, I would really extend my heartfelt appreciation for being able to be here today. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I know I didn't get really into any like state house gossip or anything, but I'm happy to do that.
I was going to say, we're getting there.
Yeah. But yes, please.
Let's talk about gossip.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about some legislation that you see that could hurt the chances of this in November?
So I think the elephant in the room here is, I'm assuming folks followed along with the special session that Governor DeWine called not more than 2 weeks ago. And the objective of that special session was to, one, put President Biden on Ohio's ballot, but then also to ban the scourge of foreign money in our elections. And if you think what the highest priority of the two were, I would only point to the fact that House Bill 1 of the special session was banning foreign money, and House Bill 2 was putting Biden on the ballot. However, yes, it's very obvious that that bill was directly intended to hurt the Citizens Not Politicians campaign. Now, lucky for us, the members of the General Assembly can't shoot straight, so they missed. They overshot. You hear during this debate that foreign money has infected our elections in some way. That's not true. The Citizens Not Politicians campaign has always operated within the confines of the law and always will. So when the Ohio Elections Commission, the regulatory body that monitors campaign finance in Ohio, issued an opinion in December of 2021, unprompted, they issued it on their own. And they said that the current campaign finance structure, the statutory structure in Ohio, forbids foreign national contributions. That's how we've been operating. It's another attempt to conjure a boogeyman out of thin air, this Hansberg Weiss, the Swiss billionaire that is the new face, the new George Soros of those who would seek to change the subject. They want to talk about anything other than the debacle of redistricting and what it has done for this state. So, it's very clear that this campaign has them scared, and they should be. And when somebody has their back against the wall, they start swinging madly, wildly. And that's all House Bill 1 was. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it potentially will not have consequences. The language was written very broadly. The penalties are severe. However, the League of Women Voters, ACLU, Citizens Not Politicians, we will adapt to the new requirements, even though we were still following the law all along. All it's going to account for is more paperwork. And the real victims of this are community groups, the ones who want to pass a school levy, the ones who want to, get a Sunday liquor permit. They're the ones who are really going to suffer under this legislation, not the because under the bill, in order for any ballot campaign to form itself, to even start gathering signatures, you will now need to designate yourself as a PAC which comes with administrative requirements. You'll need to find a treasurer.
Oh, geez.
So it will require local campaigns to professionalize themselves in a way that can be prohibitive. It will not affect the, Washington, D.C. funder network that has, $1,000 an hour attorneys who are paid to set up different bank accounts, file reports. Those entities will be fine. The real people that will be obstructed by this legislation are the people who want to put a stop sign up in their community. So, House Bill 1, though intentionally targeting our campaign, will not, at the end of the day, have a detrimental impact.
What new rights does the Attorney General have under House Bill 1?
Unilateral and unlimited investigatory and prosecutorial authority. So we will say, let me be 100% clear with you. We acknowledge that citizens, not politicians, will be investigated the day that bill takes effect, September 1. We are doing our due diligence now, creating, proper documentation patterns. We are creating policies for when that day comes. It will not derail the campaign because we know it's happening. We know it's coming. But luckily enough, we work with very smart people. We work with really great planners, and we operate within the confines of the law. So though the investigation will be a headache and it will be a nuisance, it will not stop us from getting our message out to Ohioans. It will not stop us from campaigning, and it certainly will not stop us from winning. Yes, sir.
Other than gerrymandering and redistricting, what does the ACLU and or you consider the greatest threat to democracy?
Wow. I think, without a doubt, the biggest threat to democracy is the undermining of the accuracy of our elections. Now, we all know how that started. It's something that we've been contending with for the last 4 years, and unfortunately, there is current legislation pending in the state of Ohio that would completely change the way we run elections in Ohio. And what do I mean by completely change? Well, you know how we passed a bill late last year that now you have to have a photo ID in order to cast an in-person ballot. We have new legislation that says now not only do you need a photo ID to cast a ballot, now you have to have a driver's license, not even a passport or a veteran's card. You have to have a BMV issued license to register to vote. To even register to vote. The bill puts such strict, I wouldn't even say strict, unrealistic requirements on our voting machine systems that the Legislative Service Commission, which is like the bill writing and legislative research center of our state government, their fiscal analysis about this piece of legislation, House Bill 472, the first line of it says every voting machine in the state of Ohio would have to be replaced under this legislation. But the bill sponsors took care of that because also included in the legislation would be authorization for counties to adopt hand counting of ballots. And I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room that hand counting ballots does nothing to improve election security, election accuracy, or reduce the cost. Ohio taxpayers will have to swallow over $250 million with a B, $1 billion, in order to comply with this legislation so our elections can be less secure, less reliable, and less accurate. I encourage anybody who is interested in learning more about House Bill 472 to go to the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition's website. We put together a one-pager on the bill. I will say the one-pager, though extensive, does not include everything. This is a 257-page piece of legislation. It touches on everything from voter registration to, again, voting machine counting and certification, absentee balloting. Now if you want to vote by mail under this bill, you would have to scan and print a copy of your driver's license to include in your absentee ballot. It is a dangerous piece of legislation. Now, fortunately, we have done a very good job, we being the league, ACLU, Common Cause, we've done a very good job communicating with strategic members of the General Assembly and talking to them about what all this bill would do and what it would mean. And so I do not envision this bill becoming law. I think that we still need to remain vigilant in watching it. But that is the most recent manifestation of our elections can't be trusted. We think voting machines are rigged, not we, they. So they want to go to hand counting ballots. That is an extremely dangerous proposal, and one that I don't think anybody should be willing to go down that road. Should we have one more question? I want to end on a higher note than that.
Anyone else? Any more good news,
I
Collin?
was going to say. Yes, ma'am.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in the system that could be like a keystone change, what would you do?
We need a constitutional amendment declaring voting as a fundamental right.
Yes.
Having that framework in the Ohio Constitution would keep the ACLU and the league from having to go to court to make sure that signature validation is, on the up and up for absentee ballots. We wouldn't have to go to court to make sure disabled voters can have a trusted friend or colleague return their vote by mail ballot. We wouldn't have to go to court every time the Secretary of State decides to remove 160,000 Ohioans from the voting rolls. With a fundamental right to vote, that would declare, for the first time, every citizen in Ohio affirmatively has the right to cast their ballot, regardless that they have the correct, unexpired form of photo ID. Regardless of that. Yes.
So why don't we just do a petition drive that says in, 8 words, every Ohioan who's a citizen of the United States has the right to vote.
One at a time now. No, I'm kidding. But no. I mean, that is something that is worth considering.
10 words, that's
Yeah.
all you need, maybe 15 at best.
That is certainly something worth considering. Yes.
Yay.
What you're saying is if this House Bill 472 passes, seniors who no longer drive would not be allowed to vote.
No, you would need to get a driver's license or a state ID card.
But you can't, you can get a state ID.
You can get a state ID card.
Okay.
Yes.
I misheard.
But you
No,
have to-
I said driver's license. I did not include state ID card. But you would have to go to the BMV, and yeah, you would have to get that. And if you're going to vote by mail, which if you're a senior and you're, say, living in a facility or some other, care facility, now you can't just request an absentee ballot. Now you need to get that ID, scan it, include it in your ID envelope, and then also, and not to get too much into the weeds here, the last thing, the new identity requirements for an absentee ballot on your exterior ID envelope, where you put your name, your birthday, your address. Now you would need to put your driver's license number on the outside of that as well. So it is just an identity thief's dream. And to be fair to the sponsors of that bill, that was brought up to them, and they immediately agreed that that is an issue of grave concern.
But what's their IQ then if they don't get that right at the?
Well, this is another indication that the members of the General Assembly, some of them, do not write their own legislation.
Alex
There was
does?
a website propped up about House Bill 472. It's called Ohio Vote Counts. That website was propped up a month before the bill was introduced. And it is just a point for point. This legislation is a product of the Election Integrity Network, which is a nationwide organization that pushes election denialism, conspiracy theories, and so that is who is leading this effort. So, again, I don't believe that bill will become law, but we need to pay attention.
Do we have one more question? Anyone?
How do you do this day in and day out without, screaming?
I'm a sicko. I'm just a sicko. It's bad.
Drink heavily?
Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Kent, thank you.
Thank you.